Hi everyone, welcome back to The Mystic in the Woods. I'm Kate, and today we are talking my top 10 favorite tarot decks as of 2023. So earlier this summer I did a top 10 Oracle deck list, and that list was much harder for me to put together. I think because I own more Oracle decks, I tend to hang on to them longer even if I'm not using them a lot. And what I found when I put together my top 10 tarot deck list is that first of all, there are only a handful of decks that are very much in my regular rotation that I use consistently over the course of a year. And then there's a handful that I bring in for very specific purposes that I'm very connected to. And I don't tend to keep tarot decks that I'm not using. So while I do have, like I said, this is not every tarot deck that I own, it was much easier for me to put together the top 10 list. So the only one that's not sitting here that I would give a runner-up to is my True Black Tarot. So that one's not on the list, and I'd give that a runner-up. And then perhaps my Three Trees Tarot. This is the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. So I don't have their dragon deck. I have the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. That one might get a runner-up from me as well. But these are not necessarily in a 10 to 1 order exactly, but we're going to go roughly that way. So first is the Moonchild Tarot. Now this is the new one. I just got my pre-ordered copy, and this is the Shadow Edition. So I think that's what she's calling it. I used to have the Moonchild deck, and I ended up gifting it because I just never used it. I wasn't connected to it. It was too pink, or I don't know. I just didn't use it. I just wasn't connected to it. This one I've only had for a week, and I'm very connected to it. I love this deck. So it gets number 10. It almost got a runner-up, but when I was being honest with myself, like, this is really a deck I don't think I want to be without for the foreseeable future. It's darker and grittier, and I really like the few artwork changes that she did make. While I preferred the original backing with the white, this is pretty also. So I don't have a lot to say about it because I've only been using it for a little bit over a week, but I love it. I really, really love it. So then the next deck on my list is the Witches Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. So we're going roughly in a 10 to 1 order here. This deck I spoke about recently in my Shadow Work Divine Darkness deck list. The decks I've been using recently for that. That is still pretty much all I use this deck for, if I'm being honest, is for shadow work, for connecting with feminine, divine, dark beings. That's really pretty much all I'm using this deck for. However, there is no other deck in my collection that I reach for this purpose. So some of my tarot decks that I do love and use, for example, Pagan Otherworlds, it's not on that list because there are other decks on this list I use more that I can use in place of that. There is no other tarot deck in my collection that does what this deck does for me. So while I don't use it a lot, I use it for a very specific purpose, and I really, really love it, and I don't think I'd want to be without it for that reason. It's also very different. So when you're putting together a top 10 list, if these were theoretically the only 10 decks I was going to work with for the rest of my life, this would give me something very different to work with, so that as my moods change and the seasons change and things like that, this would give me something very different to work on or work with. So that's the Witches Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. Okay, so then the next one on the list, if we're still going sort of in that order, I think is going to be the Nameless one, Tarot and Oracle. Now, I also have a full review of this deck on the channel. It is certainly a pricey deck. I have found it to be absolutely worth it. So this deck makes the top 10 list. It wouldn't make a top 5 list. And if I was going to do only 10 decks, Tarot and Oracle combined, it probably wouldn't make that list, if I'm being honest. However, I really, really love this deck. I love how versatile it is. I love the animal and symbolism choices. I love how well it reads and how well it pairs with other decks and other Tarot and Oracle decks. And I like that I can use it for a lot of different purposes. It's also, it just gives really clean but deep readings for me. So this is certainly one that I would want to keep. I also really love this deck. I would pull the grimoire out, but I use it to prop my camera on, so I can't do that. But if you choose to purchase the large grimoire that comes with this, it has, for every card, it has color associations and herbal associations and astrological associations and all of that stuff. So if you're trying to craft any kind of ritual and you don't know where to start necessarily, but you know what tarot card holds the feeling of what you're trying to do. So let's say you're trying to create a ritual around the feeling that you get with temperance. You can just open the deck and go to that page and you have everything you need to create some type of ritual or journal or all of that stuff. So it's a very versatile deck, even outside of your typical reading scenario. So that's one reason that this is on the list as well. Okay, so then the next deck that's going to be on the list, if we're going, like I said, roughly in that 10-to-1 order, is Terra of the Abyss. I won't talk about this too much because it's made a bunch of recent lists, I think, so it's on my top 10 mass market deck list. It is, I have a full review of it. This deck is such an easy reader, but without being, surface level and flat, if that kind of makes sense. It's very intuitive. So I can look at this Page of Swords, for example, and get one intuitive feeling in one reading and then a different intuitive feeling in another reading. The artwork will speak straight to my intuition, even if I didn't have the, like the tarot title and the tarot card knowledge. It's easy to follow based on Rider-Waite-Smith, but it's still different. I use it a lot when I'm reading for other people, like a lot when I'm reading for other people. I should adjust the light tad. I use it a lot when I'm reading for other people. So that's another reason that I would want this on my top 10 list. It's also, I only have a couple of mass market decks on this list, I guess. When it comes to tarot, my favorite ones have happened to be indie decks. But this is very reasonably priced, and it is, the price is low, but the quality of this deck is not. So I love this deck. And if I was going to do only 5 tarot decks, so this is where we're starting to get into, like, if I was only going to choose 5 tarot decks, this one might make the list, but we're not following the, like, 10-to-1 exactly. Okay, so then one of the decks I would probably keep, maybe not in a top 5, but maybe, this is the Modern Hue Tarot by Ritual Planner, and this is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I have talked about this one on the channel as well. I have a video talking about how I used it exclusively for a month to revisit the basics. This is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck I would keep. So I love the color palette. I love that it's watercolor, so it feels a little bit more modern, but it is the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. So you can really dive into that Rider-Waite-Smith imagery and symbolism and all of those things, but the colors they work better for me. So I know, like I've said before on here, I can't stand the yellows and the oranges in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, even on the ones that are more like watered down or more like the Centennial is a little bit different. I just don't like all the yellows and oranges. So this one allows me to still get the Rider-Waite-Smith symbolism, imagery, all that stuff in a color palette that I really like. So there's that one. The other one that is the closest to Rider-Waite-Smith other than that is going to be my Darkness of Light Tarot. And this probably, even if I could only keep 3 tarot decks or 5 tarot decks, this would probably be on the list. So we probably are now, like if I had to keep 5 decks, it probably is the 5 I'm looking at, right? These last 5. The Darkness of Light Tarot is absolutely going to be on there. It looks beautiful next to almost every deck I pair it next to. It's very Rider-Waite-Smith, but again, not 100%. I love the cardstock. I love the colors. I love that it's like oil painting feeling. This was one of my first tarot decks that I used a lot. Not my first one, but it was one of them. This 10 of Coins. This is my favorite 10 of Coins. I love this 10 of Coins. This Page of Coins. love it. So I love this deck. So I love it for shadow work. I love it for pairing with other decks. I love it for bringing in a more masculine feel. I love its versatility. I can read for anyone about anything with this deck, just like I can with Tarot of the Abyss. So I really love this deck. This would definitely make like a top 5 tarot deck list for me, is this one. So then, and because you guys know if you've been following me for a while, I almost always read with 2 tarot decks and an oracle deck. If I'm doing, that's almost always, I at least have those sitting on my table, especially when I'm reading for somebody else. So this deck pairs with the other 4 in my top 5. So it's very efficient, that. All right, so the next one is going to be the Hue Tarot. This one, if you're in the United States, the shipping is going to get you. I have found it to be absolutely, I'm just looking at if there's any information on the box, but, so this is, again, the Hue Tarot. The shipping will get you. And the cardstock, I like how it feels and how it works, but it was warped coming out of the box. So I don't particularly love that. I hope that the creator reprints this with a different cardstock someday. One that's similar but doesn't warp so badly. Now, having said that, even with the warping, I would 1000% buy it again, even on this same cardstock, because it's not falling apart. It's just it warped fast and it stayed that way and it was kind of warped out of the box. Okay. So this one I really, really love for inner child work. I love it for the Halloween season. I love it's so cute, and it has the pumpkins and the ghosts, and you get the Rider-Waite-Smith. You even get the harder cards. So here's we'll see if I can find one and we'll talk about it, but you can get even the more challenging cards. So the Devil, the Tower, Death. You get those meanings. It doesn't totally like cutesify them away, but that it is still cuter because, like, hello, look at them. So here's the 10 of Swords. Okay, I mean, you still get it there. It's not all taken out. The sting is not gone, but it's softened quite a bit because it's super cute. So this deck I love for that. Again, inner child work. I love it for the Halloween season. Look at these backings. It's holographic. It's cute. It's fun. It's easy to read. And I just would not want to be without that deck ever. All right. So then I think we'll go to this one next. This one's out of print. I talk about it on the channel some. I use it a lot when I'm demonstrating different card meetings. This is the Ember and Aura Tarot. It is out of print, so I have no idea what it costs now. And I apologize for, like, I know some people don't like it when out of print decks are on lists like this, but I also want to be honest. I love this deck. This was my first deck I used a lot of. The only thing I don't like are these knights. They're all in these frames and I don't like them. But otherwise, I love everything about this deck. And I have reconnected with it this year after sort of some time off. I think it's beautiful. It is very divine feminine, very Magdalene-y. It was exactly the deck I needed when I started reading tarot and sort of coming out from underneath the weight of Christianity. So I really love this deck. I find it's a mass-produced, or it's indie. It was an indie deck. It's out of print. I won't talk about it too much, but this might even be, if I could only keep one deck, it might be this one. And I have a backup copy of it for that reason, which I'm really glad that I purchased a backup copy of because then it went out of print. Speaking of that, I don't have a backup copy of this, and I don't have a backup copy of this. These are the only 2 decks on my top 5 here that I don't have backup copies of. So the next one is going to be, these 2, it's really hard for me to choose. I'm not sure which one would be my top 1. But we got the Hush Tarot and the Spirit Keepers Tarot. Now, the Hush Tarot I have talked about before. I have a full review on it. It's on my top 10 mass market deck lists. I love this deck. And even though it is mass market, I have a backup copy of it. Because that is how strongly I feel about these top 10 decks, or these top 5 decks, is that I would never, ever want to be without a copy of them. So I love this deck. I use it for shadow work. I use it for business a lot. when I'm making business decisions or making business planning. I use it for daily readings, for general readings. I don't read for other people with it very often. I'm actually not sure I've ever read for other people with it because it really took me a while to get to know. And it's still one that I reference the guidebook with a lot in order to get as much out of a reading or a card pull as I can. Now, I don't think you need the guidebook, but I do like the guide. So it's very little. I have a full review. You know what? I have a full review of this. The guidebook is small, but very insightful. I have a full review on this deck. But I love it because I love how earthy it is. I love the color palette. I love the animal choices. I love the size of it. I love how it fits in my hand. I love the readings that I get from this deck. So this deck, sorry, I've got hair in my eye. You know, if I had to only have one tarot deck, it might be this one too. I don't know what I would do in that instance. Like, what's your one tarot deck of all time? I honestly don't know. But it might be this one for no other reason than I love it. Like, I just really love it. Which is also kind of, you know, while I can give you a reason that I use the Hue Tarot, you know, and I can give you reasons that I use the Ember and Aura Tarot to connect in with the Magdalene and everything like that. Really, these top 5 decks, they're versatile, but I also just feel really connected to them and really, really love them. So then the last deck on the list is the Spirit Keepers Tarot. This is the Revelation Edition. This is the newer printing, the one that just came out. I do have the first printing of the Revelations edition as well, so I now have, again, 2 copies. I am still getting to know this deck for sure, because it is so layered. And while you can read it just like a normal Rider-Waite-Smith, like this is the 3 of Wands, so 3 of Scepters in this deck, like you can get the 3 of Wands meaning from this for sure. This is the 8 of Pentacles, 8 of Orbs in this deck. Here's the 6 of Chalices, so 6 of Cups. So, like, I mean, a lot of these, again, 2 of Pentacles, you can get in most of these the Rider-Waite-Smith meaning. You can read this like a normal Rider-Waite-Smith deck is my point. However, this is one of those decks where literally everything on it means something. And in the guidebook, in the bigger guidebook, the Book of Maps, I think I have it over by my bed. I don't have it here. Every single one of these has like a full myth associated with it. Everything on the card has a meaning. So like this is the 4 of Cups. And not only do we have the 4 chalices, the person has a meaning, the scorpion has a meaning, the building in the back has a meaning. Everything on this card has a meaning, as there's astrological associations. And just like everything on the card has meaning. And because it's not strictly Rider-Waite-Smith, it's taken me a while to get to know, and I haven't read for anybody else with it. I am curious though to read for somebody else with this deck and see how it reads for me, for other people. This printing, which I believe she still has copies of available as of when I'm making this video, the color saturation is different, so it's a lot more color saturated. She made just a few refinements to the artwork, if I'm correct, and she put a new backing on it. I really like the more saturated color tone because it is more saturated, but it's not too much more saturated. Like, I think that on my camera, it might be looking a little more bright and saturated than it actually is. Maybe not. Maybe just a tad. So this deck, I love because it's so deep. There's so many layers to it. I feel like if I could only have a handful of decks, I would want one that I could really study, that I could spend time studying all the symbolism, all the meaning, all the stories, that I could really, really spend time studying and getting to know and getting in there, right? And this deck would absolutely do that. So not only has this deck been an extremely profound reader for me, it would give me that deck that I could really, really spend a lot of time studying as well. So I do really love this deck. I do find this printing, it feels different than the first printing of Revelations. So the Revelation edition. So I do find that it feels differently for me. It's a little bit more chatty. It wants to read more often, be involved in more things. I also feel like this deck, while you don't need any deck or any specific deck to have sort of a direct line to communicate with your guides, I do feel like this deck over all of my other decks is like just having a pocket full of direct lines straight to the guides. So I find that very interesting. It has a different feel to it. It has a different energy to it than any other deck in my collection, which is why it definitely makes it into the top 5. Partly because I love it, partly because I could just study it forever and ever. But it is different. It feels different, and it's different. It just is different. Okay, so those are my top 10 tarot decks as of 2023. I think at the end of the year, maybe I'll do like an only 10 deck list or something like that. But if you have any questions about these decks, or if there's any one that you do want me to do a full review on or something, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.